Good day to you, and welcome to another interesting episode of frank political conversations here on Political Echoes, coming to you from Pendulum TV. I am David Olaiwola, and I am ready to take you through the show. Welcome on board. Welcome back from that short break. This is Political Echoes, in case you are just joining us. Political Echoes is a fortnight political talk show set to discuss topics and issues making rounds in the Nigerian political space and bringing to the spotlight sensitive issues that call for address in the political milieu and how people can be sensitized, make meanings, and probably draw their conclusions from these burning issues at hand. These issues affect everyone, and this is why we always have to talk about them. So today, we'll be discussing insecurity, the Nigerian government's scorecard today. To dissect this issue, I have a very special guest in the studio with me. He is a professor of counseling, criminal justice, and open distance education from the University of Ibadan. He is a Justice of the Peace, Commonwealth Fellow, and visiting scholar, Institute of Criminal Justice Studies, University of Portsmouth, United Kingdom. He is a fellow Society for Peace Studies and Practice. Welcome with me, Professor Amos Oyesoji Aremu. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we'll go straight into the discourse. In Nigeria today, insecurity is more like a norm to us already. I mean, coming from 1963's civil war to the coup of 1966, where people lost lives and property in a war they never supported nor anticipated. Moving down to when another form of insecurity was unleashed on the country with armed robbers, bandits, and other terrorists who have caused a lot of uproar in the country. Then we've had Fulani herdsmen who have caused a lot of harm in the country, and then it has caused a friction between them and their host communities, and several southern governors passing the anti-open grazing laws and all of that. And then more recently, we've had unknown gunmen who even have more sophisticated weapons than our military, and several other attacks like that. So, in your opinion, what do you think is the biggest cause of insecurity in Nigeria?
Thank you so much. I think you've tried to really x-ray we get to where we are right now. You alluded to what happened in the First Republic. Then thereafter, what happened, we talk about the issue of civil war in the country. Then after the civil war, the issue of armed robbery then. Then down the line to around some 9 years, a few years ago, when we now begin to have the issue of insecurity arising from the Boko Haram group. We left the Boko Haram group, which occupied the northeast. Then we now begin to have the issue of bandits, of people called banditry, which occupied the northwest. From the northwest, we go to the north central. And from the north central, prior before the north central, the issue of banditry, we have the issue of south-south, also talking about the issue of policy there, trying to get people kidnapped. That's actually where it started. Then, of course, the kidnapping we were witnessing there was as a result of them taking and say, look, we want control, resource control. Then later, we now begin to have the issue of kidnapping per se, which for ransom, which we also call commodification, kidnapping people for the purpose of getting money from their loved ones. Then we also have the issue of a real unleashing of mayhem. We have the issue of Fulani herdsmen, cattle rearers, and so on and so forth. So, I think the country has been overwhelmed. Let me put it that way. When it comes to the issue of insecurity, we've never had it so bad. Let me put it that way. Prior to the last 9 years or so, during the tail end of the administration of former President Jonathan Goodluck. I'm not saying he started it, but I'm talking about when it actually started. Then from there, it now became the issue of campaign before the present administration came to power. And of course, when we have this administration, the thing has not really ceased. Rather, we begin to witness more of mayhem arising from insecurity, that it becomes now practically unreasonable for people to just say you are going somewhere. In fact, you have to really plan where you are going. You have to ensure that where you are going, you really profile where you are going. You provide the road, provide the highway. Even if you are in commercial buses, you just have to provide people around you. You have to mind what you say. Then even where you get to, where you are going, you just have to really be very careful. You don't just talk anyhow. Then when you travel, you also try to live a kind of a fake life, not wanting people to know who you really are, because you are not too sure of your neighbor in quote sitting or probably standing by you. So in other words, Nigerians are living in fear. And for that very reason, the whole facet of human life in the country is compromised. Let me put it that way: is compromised. You're not even too sure of the next thing. Even when you are driving and a policeman asks you to stop, you're not too sure if it's a genuine policeman. You're not too sure if you are probably want to park in an area and you see some one or two, three guys standing discussing, maybe just discussing. You're not too sure of who they are, their identity. If you are going, probably you are just driving home and you see one or two persons standing in front of your gate, maybe you're just discussing things, you're not too sure. You see, we get it to that level that you now begin to get worried in such a way that it begins to affect our psyche as human beings. It's beginning to affect our social life as human beings. It's beginning to even affect our political life. Even when you look at other things, so we now begin to say that how did we get here? So the effect of this has been much pronounced on the country, on the image of the country, on the government, then even on average Nigerian. So these are the issues we have when it comes to the issue of insecurity in the land.
Now, you said earlier that it started from about 9 years ago, and now it has even been on the increase. But at the same time, unemployment has been on the increase. So I want us to draw a parallel line between some factors: illiteracy and unemployment, religious extremism and ethnicity. Now, it has been said from several reports that people who engage in these attacks are unemployed youth who are hopeless and then find the extremists to survive and like work for these sponsors. At the same time, there has been reports from several people that members of Boko Haram are people who are extremists of the Islamic religion, especially from the northern parts of Nigeria. So, I want you to let us know how these factors are connected with insecurity.
You see, when we talk about the question of insecurity, from extant literature and from available postulations and theories, there are many factors that could lead to the question
Insecurity.
of insecurity. Of course, you mentioned two or three of the factors. I can agree with you. The question of unemployment, in fact, that one has been in literature for years. When you're talking about that, when people are not gainfully employed, when people are not really finding a means of livelihood, they try to do whatever they can for them to be able to survive. So that is well documented in literature and in many theories of insecurity. And again, you talk about the issue of ethnicity. Of course, that also has been with us too. It's also something that's also very pronounced in some areas. We've been having the issue of one ethnic group against the other, arising from occupation of the land. You talk about the issue of religion, of course, which is also has been with us. But far more than what you've said, and of course I try to re-echo, we seem to be forgetting or not to take cognizance of other external factors. Remember that some years ago we have what they call Sahel region. Sahel region, we're talking about the countries like Libya, Morocco, Tunisia, even down the line talking about Senegal and Mali. So we're having the issue of insecurity in those countries. Exactly when Gaddafi was assassinated, was killed. There are a spillover of what happened in Libya. I'm talking about people migrating from Libya to other places, Sudan, and so on and so forth. Talking about the issue of unrest in Senegal, the issue of unrest, counter and counter coup in Mali. These are issues. And Nigeria being the big brother in Africa, there seems to be a kind of people wanting to have a kind of safe haven in Nigeria. Unfortunately, we're having so many porous borders. Of course, we have what I talked about, real borders. Let's say real borders that we know manned by people of immigration and custom officials. So we have that, but we also have other porous borders. Even here in our state, we go to Okeogo area where we have a real border. We also have rules that people can come in. And for that very reason, there was even a time when the present administration said that people can just come in, a kind of relaxing the immigration rules, and people were coming in. And for that very reason, this also are part of the factor responsible for the issue of insecurity. Then we should not also forget the fact that if you're talking about the issue of where it really started, the issue of Boko Haram, remember that in 2009, we have the issue of Boko Haram coming to fall gradually. At that point in time, the government of Nigeria went to sleep. They didn't see it as a big factor. And before you know it, the Boko Haram started with attack with the Navy police and so on and so forth. Before we know it, boomerang, to the extent that the Nigerian police is unable. I talk about the agency is unable to curtail the issue of Boko Haram. The reason why we now begin to have the harming talking about the issue of insecurity. Ordinarily, Nigerian army is not supposed to be involved in internal security. They are supposed to be involved, at the borders when we have external aggression, war per se. But right now we have the Nigerian army taking control of the issue of internal security. In other words, the police agency, which is supposed to be in the forefront of internal security, is unable to do that. We now have the Nigerian army. Of course, it's not as if that the police do not help the Nigerian army, but that is the state we have right now in the country.
Now, I want to look at it from this angle. The right to life is a very fundamental one in every single country. But in Nigeria, it seems that many Nigerians lost this right carelessly, without prior notice, without their consent. There has been consistent reports of attacks in several parts of the country. I mean, look at the issue of the abduction of Chibok girls in 2014, then the abduction of Dapchi girls in 2018. Then there has been not one, not two, not three, not four, not five railway attacks in the country. Recently was the Abuja Kaduna railway, and even after that we had the road and airport attack. We also in Abia State recently, a cleric was kidnapped and was released the next day after the payment of 100 million ransom, like mentioned earlier. Then we've also had, we can go on and on how consistent this report of attack on Nigeria has been. So I want to ask that, what has been the effect of these consistent attacks on Nigerians? How does it make Nigerians feel?
Too bad, I must say. Of course, you've tried to reel out so many series of attacks we have in the country, and at mention of each of these attacks, one felt very bad in that we're talking about the issue of what really happened in the country. We're talking about the effects of these attacks. One, we talk about the effects on individuals. I'm talking about the victims, the effect on the victims. If you should go back to talk about the girls that were captured in Chibok, or the Dapchis one, of recent, I think was it last week or so, we read in the news that two of the Chibok girls, we got them, and look at the mental torture those young ladies went through. Look at the dehumanization of the two of them, and look at the kind of torture, mental torture, emotional torture their parents and loved ones must have gone through since 2009 to date. And we're talking about that. So in other words, we're talking about something that affects an individual personally. His or her emotion, his or her psychology, his or her welfare, and so on and so forth. We're talking about the loved ones as well. You see, there's a saying in Yoruba land that if you learn your child is dead, you are far much happier about that than say your child is missing. In other words, for those ones, they don't know whether they are still alive or so. So it's like everyday agony when they wake up. Everyday agony. So that will surely affect their emotion, affect their psychology, well-being
So,
as an individual.
so don't you think that when people have this kind of emotional damage every time, don't you think it will make them become criminals themselves?
No, not really per se. You see, when you have a kind of emotional damage or emotional torture every day, it doesn't mean that because there's nothing to prove that it makes you to be also to be a criminal. For you to go to criminality is another ball game entirely. We're talking about the issue of how do people get radicalized. It's another thing. People that face emotional torture, emotional damage as a result of what happened to their loved ones may not necessarily become a criminal. Rather, they may become reticent, they may become not obeying, they may become not having faith in what happens in their areas again, in the country again. They may lose hope entirely about the country, and because they lose hope, they may also at this point not try to obey the rules and regulations of the country, laws and others in the country. But that doesn't make them to be criminals.
Okay, we have seen that insecurity in Nigeria causes fear in the hearts of Nigerians. Let's listen to what some Nigerians have to say about the issue of insecurity at this point.
Are you secure?
No, I'm not secure
Why? Why do you say you're not secure?
because of the negligence of the government, especially the so-called federal government and the state also, because they have to work in hand the issue of security, and this issue of security is paramount in any nation. So if a country is not secure, you can't bring foreigner to establish a company here. They can't establish anything here, and there won't be progress. The progress of the country will be deterred because of the insecurity. The issue of all these Fulani armed they've already surrounded the southwest. If I want to tell you lie, I'm telling you the truth. They are here. They are on ground. It's only God that help us, because you see them roaming about, moving from one location to another. Where I live at Laniba is a less city under Kenya local government, and you see them often and often. They say they are looking for all these iron cut out of the iron. They will resell again. But through that, they are monitoring all our areas one by one after them, because they move in groups, 2 or 3 of them. We challenge them sometimes, and in our community now we are planning to erect a big gate, because we have almost 8 communities in our area at Laniba. So we want to put a big gate, and put security there, permanent day and night security. They will be guided, they will be fully armed. The way I want is all the governors within the southwest is to work on our security. That's the first thing. Secondly, the state government and federal government. Federal government should give the state government to have their own state police, so that we will be secure. Because in a smaller group will be able to monitor very well. So now we need state policing.
Well, depend on what is happening in Nigeria. We can't say that they are not trying, but it's not up to the standard.
Okay.
It's not up to the standard. They should try more and more, so that the security in Nigeria will be okay. There are some, I think, forces in Nigeria. We have police, we have army, we have all many of them. And there is law. When there is law, when they make law, they need to enforce law to people. That is what happens outside the country. When you make law, then you will enforce people to abide the law. So that is, they need to do that.
Aside the calm and serenity of the environment here, there seems to be a phobia of what could happen in the next minute, and that is insecurity. Some Nigerians are of the opinion that they are not secure and hope that the Nigerian government comes to their aid. I am Olamide Olayanju. Pendulum TV.
Welcome back from that short break. In case you are just joining us, this is still Political Echoes, and I still have my very special guest in the studio. Now, Prof, many times when we get these reports of attacks in Nigeria, the response we get from the government are press releases, condolence visits, and statements like, "Oh, we're investigating the matter and will bring the criminals to book." But nothing will be done eventually. Case in point, the Owo massacre that happened in Ondo State recently, where worshippers at the St. Francis Catholic Church were murdered unjustly. It was in the news that these attackers have been apprehended, but till date we haven't seen any public prosecution of these attackers. So, how well has the Nigerian government managed insecurity in the country so far?
That is a very tricky question. Let me put it that way. And of course, the answer will not be as straight as one would expect or one want to give. I can agree with you that the government will say that, "Oh, sorry about this, we are on top of it. The culprit will surely be brought to book, we will surely apprehend them wherever they are." These are normal rhetorics that government will give, which is normal, of course, which is expected. But beyond the rhetoric, beyond just playing to the gallery, I think the government should have done better. In the case of one or two, three attacks, we've seen situations in which government has brought to book, of course, apprehended the attacker. We remember what happened. I think it was also in Ondo State when this lady was killed, the daughter of Amadisai, I think so. I think after a while, the persons involved were apprehended. I think it was just about 2 weeks ago they were sentenced. So that was a very good one, of course, which with channeling war. But at the same time, we have situation in which till date, government will say we'll get that. Of course, many of them have been apprehended. We have situation in which many Boko Haram leaders were arrested, of course, and exchanged also, that were kind of a thing. And some were also released, and of course, taking that de-radicalizing them, saying that they won't go back to that, of course. And that's another question, which some of us begin to say that if somebody was called to have done this, of course, and confessed to have done this, and you now say that you are de-radicalizing the person, how are you sure? Have you made the person that go through the process of real de-radicalization? Because for that individual to get entrenched into banditry, into terrorism, it goes through many stages as well. In fact, it's like a pyramid goes this way, and the last stage for you to be able to become a serious terrorist is what they call TB, true believer, starting from the bottom stage. For if somebody is now a true believer, which has passed through 6 or 7 stages, you now get him arrested, you now say, "Sorry, I'm not going to do it." All of a sudden, you now say you de-radicalize. For him or her to be totally de-radicalized, you have to go through the stages again from the top to bottom again.
So in essence, you think that when government tries to de-radicalize people, it is not effective?
It's not effective. That's what they said. That's why you see many of them going back to their vomit. So that's what we are saying. I think in effect, government should do more. We are not saying government is not trying. Government should do more. The case of which you refer to recently that happened, we have 40 worshippers were killed. Of course, we had few days after that the Amotekun group have really apprehended some. But what we are hearing again last 2-3 days is that they were yet to be apprehended. So at that time, you have to begin, what exactly do you want to hold on to in this wise? So these are issues now say that as much as possible, government needs to do more for Nigerians to be able to believe in the government we are having. So if that happens, Nigerian citizens will have more faith in the government. So it means if anything happens, then we are there. Our government should protect us. Look at what happened between Abuja Railway to Kaduna, where people were caught, were taken away in captivity. Weeks, days after, running to months now, these people are still there. So these are issues we're talking about. Quite unfortunately, we still find ourselves in that situation.
Talking about our defense system, Nigeria's military or defense system is probably adjudged to be one of the best. And what we see in most advanced countries is that when a particular situation occurs, when a particular attack occurs, they carry out a kind of study or survey of how that attack happened, and then they try to put things in place to ensure it doesn't occur again. But in Nigeria, it seems like when we see these attacks, it even comes back worse and worse than the way it was initially. So, do you think that the Nigerian the defense system we have in the country is strong enough to curb insecurity?
Yeah, of course, yes. I've had one or two interactions, of course, relationship with people in the when coming people in the security sector. I want to give it to them, talking about the entire security architecture of the Nigerian government. Of course, they are doing very well. What we are always saying that we want them to do more. Because the entire issue when it comes to the issue of insecurity is everybody's business. Yeah, that you are a police officer, that you are an army officer or a naval officer doesn't mean you can do it all. As members of the public, we have to also be there to support them, giving information, talking about the intelligence. And if this happens, then I think it will be helpful to them. Then you're talking about the issue that comparing what happened in foreign countries, that most of what it do that the government benefit from research on security. That's one of the problems we have in the country. We have so many research works in the universities in which government should benefit from, but these things are there are guarding doors, because what obtains in other places that research works are given to the government to be able to form policy, to be able to arrest the issue of insecurity. But this is not the case in our country. Unfortunately, we continue to have issues, and of course, especially when it comes to the issue of intelligence, and it's a great problem for us.
So, what do you think can amend the situation?
Yeah, I think you see, there must be that nexus and what I call simultaneous relationship between the government, those those in charge of our security, and even those in academia, for them to be able to work together. You see, when they work together in such a way that the members of the public too would have to be assured that all will be well, that even when I volunteer information, you not use the same information against me as an individual. These are issues. In other words, you see, in other places, people voluntarily volunteer information. But here you are scared about it. And if I should go ahead and do this, the people I give the information to will use it against me or tell people, and another will call it bounce back on you. So this are issue. In other words, there must be that coordination, simultaneous coordination, for us to be able to stem the tide of insecurity in the land.
What you are saying is in line of community policing and individual responsibility.
Oh,
So, do you
yes.
think that decentralization of the defense system and community policing is the way forward?
I think we should be careful about that. I'm not saying we should not say disadvantage of the defense system.
Okay.
Yeah, if you say the issue of internal security, in which we now have what we refer to as unitary police in the country. Of course, that's mostly my area, because of the policing in the country. So it is long overdue for us to be able to have state police. And we're talking about community police. Community policing cannot thrive in a situation where we have unitary police. What we are having in Nigeria is what we call national police. And we can't be talking about community policing where we have national policing. It cannot work. It's two extremes. For us to be able to work, for community policing to work, we have to talk about state policing, local government policing. If you go to Europe, UK, even America, even some places like India, which I have been to, or some other places I have been to, even in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, we're talking about the national police. We're talking about sub-national police, which we're talking about the regional or state police. We're even talking about county policing, which is local government policing. At that level, you see that kind of relationship between the police and members of the public. Let me give this. If you go to the UK or the US today, and you see the policemen working, you will not see any policeman working alone. They are in twos. Always in twos. No, in groups, in twos. Okay. And that has a kind of security implication. That's the guy we're talking about. If you see a Nigerian police walking about, him alone walking, he will not even be in the uniform. And if anything happens, we say, okay, wait till you got it, and so on and so on. This issue we're talking about. For us to be able to overcome the issue of insecurity, we should revisit the question of state policing. I'm not even talking about local government policing this time around, because in some places we talk about multi-level policing. But at least for now, let's talk about at two levels: national policing and sub-national police, state policing. And people say, oh no, we don't need state policing. I say we are only not being truthful to ourselves. How about what is happening in the country? How about Amotekun? Is it not more or less a state policing? The only thing about Amotekun is that they do not have constitutional backing.
Because at the same time, we can also say that it hasn't been so effective.
Yeah, I think, you see, why it's not been so effective is that because there's no constitutional backing for it. When we have constitutional backing for state policing, we find through which they will make Amotekun and the lives to be effective. And at this point in time, we say, how do we make them to work? When they make them to work means we'll be able to follow a line and make sure things are working normally in our society.
Now, we seem to be drawing a lot of inference from what happens abroad and in advanced countries. Nigeria is the supposed giant or paysetter of Africa, and many times the world attention usually shifted from issues in Nigeria to other issues like the Russian-Ukraine war and all of that. So, do you think that seeking international aid is another thing that can help us in the country?
Oh, of course, yes. The federal government has not shied away from that. We're talking about the issue of Boko Haram war and the insurgency and in the north entirely. Nigeria, of course, has done that by approaching the United States of America to supply what they call it to Kano and so on and so forth. So we are talking about the issue that seeking help. It's normal to seek help. It's a normal thing. Yeah, no, it's not as if you see. I want to give it to the government. It's not as if the government is not doing anything about that. I must say this, but certain things because of the issue of security involved will not be in the public domain. So I think this is ongoing, but it's not pronounced, making members of the public to know this. You see, they are already caught the issue of talking about the issue of top secret of what things that happen at the level of insecurity. I know that it's a relationship one way or the other. I know that.
Lastly, we talked about how the military or the defense system in the country is not yet at that intelligence or surveillance level yet. In fact, recently there was an attack on the Nigerian Defense Academy in Kaduna State. That is the physical structure of our defense system being attacked, where officers were killed and abducted. So, are we going to keep looking at it like this? Shouldn't we invest in intelligence and surveillance system if they are defeating our physical defense system?
Yeah, you see, it's quite unfortunate talking about the issue of the attack that was carried out at, I think it was last year in their Defense Academy. Then, even about that, about what happened then, even the police and other formations and security formations in the country. I think the members of this group, Akira, working, are trying to prove a point. That if we can take it to the military zones, so how about the helpless civilians? So that is the point. The issue of intelligence, the issue of reconnaissance, and the issue of surveillance, of course, are there. So when we look at these issues, we don't begin to talk how much of surveillance do our security do, how much of intelligence do they receive, how much of reconnaissance are they also receiving. So by the time we're able to put this on the table and assess all this, we'll be able to know what exactly is happening. And again, I've stressed this a number of times that within the system, when I say within the system, talking within the security architecture, there are people not working, supporting that. So there are some people benefiting from the issue of insecurity in the country. I tell you the truth. You know that the more the issue of insecurity, the more some people are smiling to the bank.
Government complicit.
So, no, I won't say the government passive, but we say who constitute the government? Are we not individuals? So in other words, what I'm talking about, some people do not want this thing to end. Because the more it on, the more of course some people are making money. Unfortunately, this is too bad for the country, I must say.
Okay, as we close now, I just want to say something. Currently, insecurity is on the rise, like it is getting too much. What do you think the Nigerian government should do as we speak? What is the way forward for them?
Yeah, number one, I think you see, when we talk about the government, we talk about individuals as well, yes. As members of the public. As members of the public, we also need to step up to claim by what happens. You see, security is everybody's business. If you and I should take cognizance of that, of course, we then begin to say, how do we help the government? Then how is the government coming to help us? Then, number two is that there must be a kind of reorganization. I'm talking about the entire architecture of our security. I'm talking of the service chiefs. We are not asking them to go, no. We are not saying that. The ones that were asked to go last time, what happened? Have you been able to do more? No, we are not. But what them people to say that people should look inward and say, what do we do? The three, we should revisit again. For the opting time, I want to say that the issue of state policing, we just need to face the truth, of course, address the truth, and for us to be able to move forward. Then number four is the issue of interagency rivalry. they must see themselves as one, working toward the same goal. The army, the military, the immigration, the custom, even the civil defense. Let everybody work together. If they all both agree to work together, they will take that we have a common enemy. But as long as I say no, I want to take the glory, I want to shine, there be issues. I think that's why I canvass for the issue of simultaneous coordination. If I'm doing it, the army must be seen to be doing it, the police must be seen to be doing it, those at the borders must be seen to be doing it. So we are all doing this, even as civilians, I must be seen to be doing it. So in other words, it's a question of when you say something and act on what you see. Then we'll be able to overcome all these challenges. Above all, government must show that seriousness. For them to be able to say, yes, we are serious. I think they must treat the criminals. I use the word criminals. Give them. You see, it's unfortunate in this country. You arrest a criminal, you sentence him, you ask him to go to 2-3 years imprisonment, option of fine. So we're talking about the issue of judicial system as a criminal justice. We must also reveal that. How or now will you say somebody who has killed can go to 3, 4, 5 years option of fine? No, we should also address that. Quite unfortunate. Talking about our criminal justice, most of the laws have to be reviewed because they are no longer in tandem with practices we have these days. It can't stand again. I'm sorry to say that.
The issues of insecurity are inexhaustible. We can talk and talk and talk, and we still have more to talk about. So you've seen that security is not just government's business. Security is everybody's affair. Security is everyone's business. You have to be vigilant. You have to be conscious. You have to be able to report suspected criminal activities to the police and responsible agents, and you have to be law-abiding citizens. Special thanks to my guest, Professor Oyesoji Aremu.
My pleasure.
For being our call despite your busy schedule.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And many thanks to you for joining us on today's episode of Political Echoes. I am David Olaiwola, and I'll be back in the next 2 weeks for the next episode of Political Echoes. Till then, don't touch the dial. Bye.